We've seen in the last several years, American politics pushing to the left. And the question is, what is driving this? Now, we can answer at one level by saying, well, what's driving it is the left controls the Senate, and the left controls the White House, and the left is dominant in media and so many other institutions. And that is true, but it is an insufficient explanation because, think about it, the left controls some things, but we control others. We control, for example, the House. Well, yes, Dinesh, but our control over the House is very narrow. Well, yeah, but the left's control of the Senate is even narrower. They have a one-vote majority in the Senate. We have at least a few-vote majority in the House. They have the White House, which is a good thing to have, but we have the Supreme Court. When you go to the state level, when it comes to attorneys general, when it comes to secretaries of state, governors, and so on, we are at least equally well represented. So that doesn't really do the trick. Now, the left has been coming up with a narrative for its own success. And the narrative is, in fact, not really true. The narrative is that American society is becoming more diverse. American society now has more blacks because the black birth rate is higher than the white birth rate. It has more Hispanics, in part due to both legal and I suppose also illegal immigration. It has more Asian Americans have come in as well. Now, they were once almost infinitesimal part of the population. Now, 7 or 8%? So a significant minority. And so all of this is creating a new ethnically diverse culture that is making America, if you will, lurch leftward. But that is not, in fact, the case. The real secret to the leftward drift of the Democratic Party and of American politics is single white women. Now, let's back up before we analyze this because there are other factors that are important. For example, racial and ethnic differences play a role in American politics. There was a remarkable book that talked about American folkways that goes back to say that even among white immigrants who have come over the decades and even centuries to America, you've got the Scot-Irish, and they are different from the kind of the people who came from England, and the Episcopalians are different, for example, from the Baptists, and the people who settled New England were a different stock than the people who went, for example, and settled in places like Virginia and Charleston, and so on. So in other words, that you've got these regional ethnic differences. There are, of course, religious differences. And so, for example, in New York City, there were differences between the Yankee Protestants and the Irish Catholics. There were even differences among the Catholics between the Irish and the Italians. There are differences between the politics of, say, Catholics on the one hand and evangelical Protestants on the other. We know that evangelicals, for example, now are pretty much as much of a bedrock of the Republican Party as, say, blacks are and have been in recent years of the Democratic Party. We also hear a lot about the gender gap, the difference between male and female. But if you burrow a little more closely, you realize it's not exactly a gender gap. It's sort of a marriage gap. Another way to put it is that if you find somebody who is married with children, a family, it is quite likely that all the voting members of that family, obviously I'm talking about the parents, are likely to be Republican. There's a high chance that they'll be Republican. If you find a married couple, there's a decent chance, better than 50-50, that that couple will be Republican. On the other hand, if you find a single woman, and this also applies, although to a lesser degree, for divorced women who are now single. But either way, if you're looking at single women, they heavily trend Democratic. This is, by the way, not true of single men. Single men are much more likely to break out more evenly and, in fact, even lean slightly Republican. But single women are now a key constituency of the Democratic Party. In fact, unmarried women favor Democrats 68 to 31%. It is, you remember under Obama that he made some videos about this woman named Julia, and essentially the idea was that Julia was going to be looked after from cradle to grave by the state. And this was a naked appeal to single women, saying basically, if you're a single woman, you don't have to look to a husband or a family, because after all, here we are the government and we are ready to support you. So you've got these single women, and these single women are, well, to be honest, and this doesn't apply to every one of them, but they're a little neurotic. In fact, what surveys have shown that they are the unhappiest group in the American population. These single women are not happy with their lives. And by the way, this is self-reported. It's not like other people are saying, you're not happy, look at you, you're not happy because you don't have a husband. No, these are people who describe themselves as unhappy. Whereas, by the way, by contrast, the other groups tend to describe themselves as happy. Single men, by the way, are pretty happy. They're like, I'm happy being single, I'll find somebody. Married people are happy, and married people with children are actually the happiest people in America. But the single women are unhappy, and they're driving a politics of discontent, which is, I think, helping to define the Democratic Party. They're angry. If you think our politics has become more polarizing, but not only are they angry, they're angry, but they don't want to allow other people to say things that they disagree with. So they are also advocates of censorship. They're advocates of repression. For example, young women on campus are much more likely than young men to say, oh yeah, hateful speech should be suppressed. So they don't believe, by and large, in the First Amendment. And the point I want to make is that why are we letting the unhappiest people in America drive our politics? Vladimir Putin called the US dollar's drop in dominance objective and irreversible, as Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa formally agreed to use local currencies in trade instead of the US dollar. It's the first shoe to fall. As demand for the dollar weakens, the buying power of the dollar weakens. And this is why Birch Gold Group is busier now than ever. Investors and savers are looking to harness the power of physical gold held in a tax-sheltered IRA. Debbie and I buy gold from Birch Gold. We trust them to help us diversify our savings. Text Dinesh to 989898. You'll get a free information kit on gold with thousands of happy customers, an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews. You can count on Birch Gold to help you navigate transitioning an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. As the US dollar continues to receive pressure from foreign currencies, digital currency, and central banks, arm yourself with information on how to protect your savings. Text Dinesh to 989898 to get your free information kit now.